Well, hello again and welcome everybody to the webinar. It's wonderful to have you joining us today. There's people joining even as we speak now, so you're very welcome and it's great to be online together. My name is Dan Richards. I'm with My Firm's app and it's wonderful to have alongside me today Alistair Barlow from Flinder and Luke Doherty from Mindful Peak Performance. And the purpose of this session, we'll do some introductions in just a moment's time, but the purpose of this session is to try and help. There's been so much that's been happening in the world recently, hasn't there, with COVID-19 and everything else that's been going on anyway. And within all of that, it's very easy to get stuck into processes and systems and softwares and technologies and what we're doing to support our customers, whomever we are, and wherever those customers may be. And there are teams that have become remote working, most of them overnight. And there are some like Alistair who are a long way down that digital path, but there are others where this has become a real shock to the system. And suddenly people are working from that home environment and far on a field. That might be amongst the same city, it might be all over the world. And so when we stop and take a moment to think, actually, with all these processes and all these things that are going on, there are people behind those processes. And today's session is about focusing in on you and your team and on each of us. And what can we do that's going to help us to reach a peak mental fitness? What is it that we can do that's going to help to create a bit more breadth and space and handle pressure that's already with us and pressure that will come down the road, because there's more to come, as I'm sure we can all see as well. And there are some certain techniques and some certain experiences that have helped with that. So that's the scene for today. We're not going to focus on any of those other things, simply you and your team and what are some of the things that can be done to help. So I'm going to pause for a moment. I'm going to ask Alistair to introduce himself, and then perhaps Luke, you'd be kind enough to introduce yourselves, and then we'll have a brief conversation from there.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks, Dan. Good morning, everybody. I hope everyone's well. My name's Alistair Barlow. I'm founder and chief dreamer at Flinder, as you can see here, proudly sporting the t-shirt. Flinder is an accounting, consulting and data analytics business based in London, traditionally based in London, obviously now a little bit more dispersed, working from home. Our mission at Flinder is to help businesses, help growing businesses meet their potential faster. So it's slight nuance there in terms of our objective versus maybe other accounting firms' more traditional objectives. We set our business up just over 3 years ago, really wanting to create a new category of accounting, focusing much more on performance management for SMEs, and that's ultimately for around better decision making. We're heavily technology focused, even more so probably than the typical cloud firm, because we develop our own proprietary tech and we use data in a very, very powerful way. But I think what's really important to stress in here, I think Dan said at the beginning, is that even the amount of technology we use, we're still a people-powered and people-empowered business. And I think that's something to be on a webinar like this, talking about mental fitness, is a little bit break from the norm when we talk about how do you get most out of your app stack, how do you get most out of technology, how do you become more efficient, how do you work virtually, all those sorts of things. And I think actually it's something that's completely underserved in accounting, is that, you know, we focus on trying to use technology so much, but actually there's a human element, a human capital element, a human wellness part there that actually we can really nurture a lot more than we can with the technology and get great wins from a firm, but from a people perspective. So I feel very passionately about this in the mental fitness side of things. And then just lastly, to kind of round off the intro about me, I spent 16 years at PwC, obviously comes in different countries, worked and lived in different countries, traveled to many different countries, worked with some very, very large multinational businesses. Clearly it comes with very high stress moments as well in terms of deliverables and working with very long hours for clients till 2 in the morning, back up at 6 in the morning. And then, as I say, 3 years ago, I left PwC and set Flinder up with Luke Streeter, just to make sure it's not the same Luke that's on this webinar that's talking. So that's a brief intro from me.
Great, thanks, Alistair. That's awesome. We'll ask a little bit more about that in just a moment's time. Luke, we've got a little slide to help bring a bit of context to your background, but do you want to talk us through a bit more about where you come from as well?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so my name's Luke Doherty, and my mindfulness journey in a way started with rugby. As a youth, I played rugby for England under 18s and was pursuing a career in rugby. I was associated with Sale Sharks Academy. I didn't make it as a professional rugby player for various reasons, including a back injury. But yeah, I've always had a passion for sport and an elite sport particularly, and had quite a few friends who did make it. But in my journey around sport, I witnessed two friends who sadly committed suicide, who were playing high-level professional rugby in the Premiership, and they were breaking through. And particularly with one of them, they had an injury and couldn't come to terms with that, and that left, yeah, that really made an impression on me at an early age about mental health and sport, and when you're under pressure and how you deal with pressure as a human being, and when you bury things, what are some of the sort of consequences that can happen. So that's always had an impression on me throughout my life. And then I fast forwarded and then went into law for quite a few years. Well, not quite a few years, actually, only 3 or 4 years. I didn't really enjoy that. But what came out of that, again, that was quite a pressured period of my life. What came out of that was mindfulness started to come into my life at that time. So then I decided for 7 years to train in mindfulness. 5 years of that I spent at a Buddhist centre training particularly, and I also trained at Oxford University and an organisation called Breathworks. So I did my training in mindfulness, and in the back of my mind there was always this thing about how to reach back into the sports world and help people with mental health issues, or just see how mindfulness could help. So that was still in the back of my mind. So I started working specifically with depression, addiction, and anxiety, and running mindfulness courses. And I headed up the Breathing Space project, which is one of the biggest mindfulness projects in the UK, which is a secular wing of the London Buddhist Centre. And then I started to realise I wanted to set my own company up. And then for the last 2.5 years, I've been developing my own company, which is about bringing mindfulness into the sports world. And I got taken on by Saracens for a short period, and then became the Harlequins mindfulness coach. So when rugby has been one of my that was my starting block in the sports world, and then I broadened out. But yeah, it's been a really interesting kind of segue into the sports world, and also seeing the crossover between I also work in the corporate world as well, so showing my understanding from sports world, working with teams and individuals in that context has really broadened out, and I really want to show and help corporate organisations and individuals working in corporate organisations how they can use mindfulness. At the end of the day, we're all human beings in those contexts, working with our own tasks, our own pressures, working with other people, working in teams. So there's a lot of crossover how mindfulness can help in any pressured environment for you to enhance your performance, but also really look after your well-being and explore the interface between the two. So that's my broader background. And just to say more broadly, I also have a social vision. So we, as an organisation, we run projects for young people at risk of gang crime and knife involvement in London, and we run specific mindfulness programs infusing mindfulness with boxing, believe it or not. So that combination has been really interesting, and a way of making mindfulness accessible to a group of young people who wouldn't sit still for 2 minutes at school. And why would you always want to sit still if you're a young person with loads of energy? So I'm really about how to make mindfulness accessible to groups of people, whether it's in the corporate world, for young people, for elite athletes. Yeah, so that's a bit of a flavour of me.
Brilliant. Thanks, Luke. It's really helpful to hear, and a very interesting story that leads through there. One of the things when the three of us were chatting ahead of today's session, and just to let everyone know, Luke, in a few moments' time, a few minutes, once we've had a conversation together, you're going to run a live mindfulness session for us all, which will be fantastic to partake in. The mindfulness can often have quite a fluffy apparel around it, can't it? And Alistair touched on this in his intro as well. The accountancy profession globally doesn't always come to mind when you think of mindfulness and taking care of oneself in that way. And but what your experience that you're coming out from there, Luke, seems to be saying is that with these elite athletes, England rugby stars and very dedicated athletes in high pressure situations on a Monday, where they're straight after the games from the weekend and everything's on the line, through to these youth who you work a combination of mindfulness and boxing, and you're working together there, you're able to use these practices to create certain attributes, I guess, are you, that would help ordinary people like myself and others to benefit from.
Yeah, exactly that. So on a Monday I work at Harlequins, and that's they perform usually on a Saturday or a Sunday, so that's quite a high pressured moment where a lot of analysis happens. It's a day with a lot of back-to-back meetings, and I'm sure you're all familiar with that scenario in any work environment. And what I'm doing there is I'm taking the team out for half an hour, splitting them into backs and forwards and doing a meditation with them, giving them a chance to talk in that space and let go of some tension, and then refocused on what they can control for the week. So it's a kind of mental refocus session. And then with individuals, I'm taking them out of that routine and that back-to-back meetings and doing sessions with them and giving them a chance to kind of get some perspective, let go of the analytical mindset just for 20 minutes, half an hour, and get that kind of recharge. And a lot of the players come back after those sessions feeling lighter, more engaged, more perspective, less pressure, and can just see a little bit above the kind of daily speed of things. And that enhances your well-being because you're coming below the kind of busyness. But it also allows you to go back into work with a lot more clarity and a lot more focus. And whether you're a young person going into an exam, whether you're a leader going into a board meeting, whether you're an elite athlete preparing for an analysis meeting or a game, you know, this is applicable.
Yeah,
I don't know if you can comment that, Storm.
Yeah, do you know what's interesting? I think it's a really valid point in terms of the clarity and the focus going back from having a mindfulness session, and actually kind of I completely echo that. I think so I think that one of the challenges from, say, accountants, and it's probably the same for everyone, is essentially a lot of accountants are selling their time to their clients, and so it's all about being as productive as possible. And I think it's a catch-22 in that they're kind of like, I don't want to distract myself, I want to get like focus on getting work done. But I think what they can't, I think what a lot of people that haven't necessarily kind of taken a step into mindfulness, the restriction they're having is on themselves. You know, they are working away in the law of diminishing returns. The more hours you work, the less effective and efficient you become at doing what you're doing, right? So 4 hours in the evening for me, if I was to work in the evening, it's probably like 1 hour working in the morning. But actually, if you take that step away, you practice mindfulness, you become much clearer, your thoughts become a lot more focused, and you become a lot more productive. So taking that half an hour or 45 minutes away from processing or doing something in selling your time, you actually can become a lot clearer, think a lot straighter, think a lot more strategic, and actually get things done a lot quicker, more effectively. So it has that power to do that, and it certainly has done for me. So yeah, I think cleansing and become clearer from mindfulness is one of the powerful things. But I think a lot of people probably listening to this, and generalization, but people I know in the accounting world, they are probably going, well, I've got this to do, I've got that to do, and it's going to take me away from it. But actually taking that step back and practicing it it can create that space actually, and create that much more productive environment mentally, and also help you think more strategically. I think that's one thing that certainly helped with me as well.
And you've got your own personal experience with that, Alistair, which before we hand over to Luke shortly to run a session, it'd be lovely, if you don't mind, just to understand a bit more about, because I found it very relatable. You know, I've outside of business, and like you've been in business a long time, you know, I've been in very high pressure situations, expedition environments around the world, which have been a great joy and a privilege to be on. And depending on your view of it, you either get the best or the worst of nature getting thrown at you. But you know, that means actually taking some time out in those very high pressured environments to think, to stop, to breathe, to pay attention to what's going on, allows better decision making. That better decision making makes a difference to success. And in that environment, that might mean life or death. In a business environment, those same practices and the same attributes mean the difference between excellent customer care and not so good customer care, or between a workforce that's delivering, or through making profit or not, and so on. So maybe you'd be kind enough to unpack a bit more about your own experience of that and some of what you're doing in the firm.
Yeah, definitely. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, just over 3 years ago, we left PwC, which is, you know, a very stressful environment. Something like 22,000 people working there in the UK alone, 200,000 globally. We took almost some lessons that we experienced there, both good and I'm not sure I want to say the word bad, but different experiences. And we wanted to create an environment for our people that was promoted, and we don't have this absolutely nailed, obviously, no one really does, but we want to promote an environment that was much more about a well-being environment and helping the team open up and have those conversations at the right time with us when they needed them. So I think, you know, I'll put a sweeping generalization across the profession, is that it's a hard profession. It's quite a black and white profession. It's I think you used the word fluffy before. It's anything but fluffy. We are expected to pass exams at an early stage in our career, work to multiple deadlines. We've got high expectations and high demands across us. We work in a regulated environment. We're always working to a deadline, whether that's a tax filing deadline, a client reporting deadline, an internal deadline. Ours tend to be pretty long, working towards those sprint deadlines. And once we've done one, we sprint to another one, and we don't really have time to catch up and think. And so, you know, we traditionally, the accountant's been quite a black and white character. Now, I appreciate that's a sweeping generalization, but that's generally what the traditional accountant's known for, and less kind of fluffy, less kind of colorful, less kind of talking about emotions, typically not known well for communicating because we're very typically number focused. So there's that lack of communication, maybe sometimes lack of empathy as well. And so all that, I think, leads to this kind of stereotype of not being able to open up, not being able to talk about our feelings, not being able to practice things like mindfulness that are perceived to be fluffy because they're not kind of tangible things that we can physically see. But there's absolutely that, you know, that I think the people that focus much more on their mental fitness and their mind really can unlock the power of people, and I think I really believe in that. So I think that's kind of like, if you frame the industry or the sector, that's kind of, you know, what I think a lot of people can relate to. We talk about a lot of technology, as I said before. A lot of firms are spending a lot of money on technology, lots of technology webinars, and technology is absolutely important to become more efficient. But actually, let's not forget, we are a people business, and therefore people are probably the most subjective part of our business, an emotional part of our business compared to whatever else we can manage. And so I think having more of a focus and spending more time on the well-being of our people and trying to unlock their potential is extremely important. Some of the things that we do, and it's not just about good for business, it's about good for people as well, and our team, and genuinely caring about them. A couple of things we brought to Flinder or created at Flinder because of our experiences before was, one of the key things is what we call self-reflections. And we're really adamant about this on a Friday, that our team take 10-15 minutes and self-reflect on how they feel and how they felt in that past week. And it's quite interesting when we hire some people in, sometimes there's a little bit of getting used to what self-reflection is. There's a little bit of, I did this, I did that this week, and I bring it back to say, no, we can talk about what you did, we can see what you did because of the technology. It's how do you feel? It's what's up here. I want to know whether you've had a good week because of whatever. I want to know if you've had a challenging week, what the challenges were, if you are feeling happy, sad, depressed, whatever it is, because at that point we can have a conversation and make an intervention. And sometimes it doesn't need an intervention. Sometimes it just needs somebody to download and kind of get it off their chest, and that's equally as important. But that's one of the mechanisms, because one thing I saw when we were at PwC is somebody would leave the firm and you'd have a conversation with them and say, oh, let's talk about this, and they talk about it and their mind's already made up because this is something that's happened 6 months ago, and they're working too many hours, they're stressed or whatever it might be, and it's gone on for 6 months. They've made their mind up, and it's kind of like, well, if you spoke to me 6 months ago, we could have changed it, but it's been going on for 6 months. I'm now, my mindset's somewhere else. And so we wanted to nip that in the bud real time. We talk about real-time technology and information. We wanted to, as real time as we could, get something out of our people, our team's head, so we can have a conversation about what their environment is like. And that for us is really, really important. It's actually probably one of the most important things and connections we have with our team, so we can understand what is going on in their mind. And that sounds a little bit Matrix-like, but it's very important to understand how they're feeling, so we can change something, make that intervention, and make them either support them, giving them more support, working on a challenging client with them, or whatever it might be. And sometimes it could be, I've not been challenged enough this week. I clearly hope that's not the case, but that it can be. It's about putting an intervention in place and having that conversation very timely. That's just one kind of really key part that we put in. We've got other things around well-being on we have a fitness channel on Slack that people, right now it's very important, people post workouts, healthy concoctions of drinks and those sorts of things. And it doesn't have to be client specific. It's generally about how they are working in their environment, how they're feeling, and it's this intangible word, this touch, this feel thing that we're very focused on. But that's as the team. As a business owner, we have huge amounts of stress as well, and I'm sure there's probably some business owners on here on this webinar now, so there's some lessons there to apply to the team. But equally, as a business owner, everything rests on our shoulders, and luckily I have a business partner, Luke Streeter, that I can share that load with. Other sole practitioners aren't as lucky or fortuitous to share that load, and so they're carrying a lot of stress themselves and not able to dissipate it or talk to someone, very much have that kind of counseling relationship with each other, that we can share the load and we can listen. And sometimes it doesn't require anything, it just requires a bit of empathy. But some of the other things we've put in place is be part of a mastermind group. So, you know, a number of accounting leaders get together once a quarter and chat more frequently and just share some of the experiences and challenges we have to get them off our chest. It's quite therapeutic to do that. And so that's absolutely helped us as a business, kind of all those mechanisms. And for me, mindfulness has really helped me kind of clear my mind out, focus, and I call myself Chief Dreamer at Flinder rather than CEO or MD. And there's actually a reason for that. It's because I'm very much about thinking forward and kind of coming up with the next idea, the next part of the strategy. And mindfulness helps cleanse my mind from kind of some of the noise and really focus and kind of think really laterally about where should our business, not just accounting firm, where should our business be focusing and going forward. And it really inspires me not to be tunnel vision about the process. It really helps me to think a lot more laterally. And so those types of things are just kind of, you know, they're just different tools in my kind of bag of tricks in my toolkit that kind of have helped Flinder get to where we are within 3 years actually, which is, you know, we started from blank canvas and grew it up with all that sort of stuff in mind. It's absolutely helped us.
That's fascinating to listen to, Alice. It really genuinely is. And you've done very well with the firm over the last 3 years. You know, however you want to measure it, in terms of your team, the client base that you serve, the outcomes your customers experience, the awards that you've won. So, you know, something's working. So that's good. Yeah. Luke, you might want to pick up on some of what Alice has said in just a moment. A couple of things that stood out to me there were as a sole practitioner, it can be very lonely. You know, that pressure does rest on the shoulders, and even sometimes within a partnership environment, you might not necessarily have the type of relationship that you and your partner do, where you're that able to be that open. And so the importance of, whether it's on an individual level in the privacy of your own space, office, home, wherever you may be, to take some time out, like Luke's about to share with us, or at the very least, just finding someone to talk to. Sometimes, you know, we've got to get rid of that stigma, don't we? A lot gets spoken about it these days, which is great. But it can be very hard when you think, whoever you are, whether it's man, woman, it doesn't matter. If you're at the top of something, you feel, well, I shouldn't have to talk to somebody. You know, this is mine to run. And sometimes you get rid of that stigma. And if you do need to talk, at the very least, make sure you do talk to someone. Yeah. Luke, what are your views?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we could stay talking instead of me doing a practice. I'm finding this really interesting, and I really like this this thing you have in your organisation there, where you're encouraging people to step a bit below the everyday and actually express, well, how am I finding this week? And in a way, that's what mindfulness is doing, because mindfulness, when you do this session, which I'm going to introduce in a moment, you're going to notice that your mind is constantly wandering off and thinking, I've got this to do, I've got that to do, I've got blah, 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 blah. Your mind will go off into the past or to the future, and it will carry on. Because I've got lots to do during the day, and we've got a long to-do list and things to action usually, our minds operate in that mode. And what Alistair was saying about opening up and cleansing a space where he can think more broadly, in a way, mindfulness is coming underneath the past rational mind, which is very, very useful for daily work and for achieving things. But if you can below and body sensations, start to become aware of how you feel, you create a bit of space, a lot of creativity can come through in that, and a lot of perspective and a lot more balanced. I find that you use that as a leader, Alistair, and how that helps you kind of vision in that way. So that's one thing that really struck me about what you were saying. Another thing that struck me, counterintuitive it is to stop and not do something that's related to a task. This is quite a radical thing, actually. To stop. Actually, my meditation teacher said doing nothing is one of the most radical things you can do in our time, and I believe that. And I think actually you've got to get used to stopping, doing these mindfulness practices, and trusting that it's actually useful, because your mind will start thinking, what am I doing? What's this guy talking about? Why aren't I doing what I'm meant to be doing? So you've got to kind of work with the resistances to actually, and this is why it's fitness, it's training. This is why these symbols come in, because you've got to train your mind to come back to the present, to acclimatize with the sensations in the body, to notice what it's like to be calm. It can be quite strange to notice what it's like to be calm if you're very busy in life. So it's a training and it's a process. It's not something, you're not going to get a quick fix with mindfulness. And to do anything well, you've got to put training and practice into it. So there's a lot of patience that needs to go into mindfulness training, a lot of patience and kindness towards yourself when you notice how busy your mind is. So I just wanted to put that as a bit of a banner. I feel quite stimulated to carry on talking, actually, because I think what you're saying is quite interesting. You got a response.
I've got a really good example, look, of bringing this to life. It must have been about 6 months ago now. I was talking with one of our associates, Zoheb, and I can't remember. It was I think it was him about he was doing kind of process after process after process. And I said to him, I said, Zoheb, I said, for the next week, I want you to take 15 minutes every day and just look out the window and just look out the window. And he looked at me like I was on another planet, which is quite funny, but he persevered and did it. And it was about just kind of not being busy, like physically busy or busy in your mind, and just taking that 15 minutes to reflect and to think and to cleanse. And it's, as I say, it's certainly given us clarity in terms of our strategy, in terms of creating a new category of kind of accounting, and all the kind of great ideas we've had in terms of driving our business forward. It absolutely has done.
So shall we give it a go?
I think, Luke, we should give it a go, because we could spend the rest of the afternoon talking these things through. It's fascinating to listen to. Alistair, you and I will drop off screen in a moment and leave Luke to take us all through the session. Before we go, I'm really grateful for your time as well, Alistair, on this session and sharing your story. So if people wanted to find out a little bit more about you and what you're up to.
Yeah, well, you can just Google Flinder, Google me, Alistair Barlow, Alastair. Obviously, I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter, and all the other social channels. Feel free to follow or connect with me. I really believe this is an undertapped area in our profession, and I feel very passionate about mindfulness, about counselling, and about talking. So, you know, let's change the stereotype of accounting from black and white numbers to much more about communication and empathy.
Sounds excellent, and likewise, folks, we'll be in touch as well, and you know how to find me, Dan Richards, LinkedIn, and other such places also. So, Luke, Alistair and I will turn our webcams off and go on mute now, and leave you to take us through a session, and then you'll kindly close the webinar when we're done.
Cheers. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks all.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Alistair. That was a very stimulating conversation. And yeah, so I'm going to guide us in the mindfulness practice now. And just to pick up on some of the things we were just talking about there. In mindfulness, we talk about shifting from doing mode into being mode. And it very much relates to what we were talking about. In daily life, we often need to be in doing mode, where we're responding to things, we're meeting deadlines, we are using our rational analytical mindset very clearly and hopefully very effectively. But in mindfulness, we're trying to open up a different kind of mode, which is about what Alistair was talking about there when he was encouraging his colleague to have 15 minutes where you just look out the window. It's a mode of being where you're not goal driven, where you're not trying to achieve anything, where you're just trying to become aware of how you feel, the sensations in the body, and give yourself some space. And it will, if you've not done this before, it might be a bit strange. You might not be used to it. But it's just trusting that if you create that space for yourself, A, you're going to potentially let go of tension and become more balanced and healthy. But B, you're going to be able to go back into what you're doing with more clarity, more perspective, and more opportunity to think more creatively. That's the potential that mindfulness has. And it's training. So with physical training, you do repetitions to build muscle mass. With mindfulness, when your mind wanders off and gets caught up in thoughts, meetings, responses, fixing problems, all sorts of things your mind will get caught up with, you just patiently come back to my guidance and come back to the sensations in the body. And we're building the capacity to just be present in a different kind of way as we do that. So I won't say any more. We're actually going to do a direct meditation practice. All you need to be doing is sitting comfortably. And you can be sitting on a chair or on the floor. So I'm just going to give you 10-20 seconds just to get in a position that you're comfortable. Ideally, just sat on a chair. And then I'd like you to close your eyes if you're happy to do that. And as you close your eyes, just take 3 deeper breaths. And as you take those deeper breaths, just becoming aware of the contact your body has with the ground. Your feet, your legs, what you're sitting on, and just allow your body to be heavy and to be rested. And we're going to do what's called a body scan meditation. So we're going to scan through the body, and all you've got to do is just notice the sensations in the different parts of the body, whether the sensations are pleasant, unpleasant, or somewhere in the middle. We're not trying to judge our experience, we're just noticing the tensions, the sensations that we hold in the body, and just giving that some space. So just starting by bringing your awareness down to the shoulders and resting your awareness over your shoulders. And you might already have noticed that your mind has wandered off and got caught up in thoughts. And don't worry if it has. You just patiently bring your awareness back to the shoulders and just rest your awareness there and allow your shoulders to be heavy. Just having an open, curious attitude to any tensions, the weight of your shoulders. Sometimes our shoulders can be quite a bit habitually tense, particularly if we're in front of a screen a lot. So if you just become aware of that part of the body, you might notice that your shoulders are just dropping ever so slightly. So see if you can notice that. And then bringing your awareness from your shoulders down your arms, including your biceps and triceps. Allowing your shoulders and your arms to be really heavy, rested. And then further down to your elbow joints, and your forearms and your wrists. All the time you're allowing your body to come to a rest. And all you're doing is noticing the sensations, the weight, and then right down to your fingers, hands, palms. And just checking in with your mind again. If you've got caught up in thoughts, that doesn't mean you can't meditate or you can't do mindfulness. It's completely normal that your mind wanders off in that way. You just got to bring your awareness back down to your hands. And then from your hands, allowing your awareness to drop down to the backs of your legs, to your hamstrings. Your sitting bones. And just allowing your legs to be really heavy. And just rest down there for a few moments. And then allow your awareness to move further down. We're going to make our way right the way down to the feet, behind the kneecaps, over the calves, the way down to our feet, noticing our toes, and just resting your awareness down by the ground and noticing that resistance. Again, just checking in mind. Don't worry if you've got caught up in thoughts, in planning, in responding. It's completely normal with these practices. Bring your awareness back. Now bringing your awareness down to the furthest point away from the head, down to the ground, down to your feet. And now we're going to bring our awareness back up the body and make our way to the stomach area. Just grab your awareness over the front of your legs to start with. Shins and kneecaps. And then broadening out over your quadriceps, the front part of your legs. Again, the simplicity of just noticing the sensations, the weight, making that the focus of your awareness as opposed to all the things of daily life, which are really important, but we're just trying to step below that for a few minutes to recharge, to energize, to let go. But now just bringing your awareness and resting your awareness on your stomach area. When you come to the area, all I want you to do is just notice that your stomach is moving naturally as you're breathing. You don't need to breathe in any particular way. You just notice the stomach area, notice the sensations. And just rest there for a few moments. And there might be a bit of tension in this part of the body. You might feel calm in this part of the body. There might be both. So just noticing the movements, just acknowledging any sensations wherever they are on that spectrum. And even if it feels a little bit uncomfortable, just trusting this practice and judging the effect of it at the end. Feel and what happens when you move off into the next thing you're going to do. So just staying with the stomach area for a few moments. And broad include the cage. And again, you'll notice the subtle movements in this part as you're noticing that, you're connecting to the sensations. And then broader still to include your chest area. And just holding your awareness there as we move into the final stage of this practice, just noticing your chest area, noticing the movements, noticing any subtle sensations. Don't worry if your mind is still getting caught up in thoughts, problem solving, working on tasks. Doesn't matter, you just bring your awareness away from that and back to the chest area and train your awareness to come back to the present moment, to right now. Apologies for that noise. And now bringing your awareness to the shoulders to finish the practice where we started. So just noticing the weight of your shoulders, noticing how your shoulders feel. Are your shoulders lighter? Are they heavier? Just rest there for a few moments. And then letting go of trying to become aware of anything. The shoulders, the sensations in the body, just sit for this next 10, 20 seconds and just allow your body just to be heavy. A bit like Alistair was saying in the webinar, just looking out the window, gazing, just having a period of making no effort at all, just resting. and then opening your eyes. So that was the mindfulness practice, and I hope you found that useful. This is the end of the webinar now. So I want to thank you for attending. And if you want to continue your mindfulness practice or understand more about how you can use it, you can visit my website on www.mindfulpeakperformance.com, and particularly draw your attention to a course starting next Wednesday if you're interested in that. Thanks very much to Alistair and Dan for that conversation, and we're going to end there. Thank you.